Hey y'all, this is Sarah from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. What happens when we die? From Angel Studios, the force behind Sound of Freedom and The Chosen, comes an unprecedented deep dive into the phenomena of near-death experiences in the new movie, After Death. After Death makes a courageous venture into a hotly debated, mysterious subject by comparing near-death experience with cutting-edge scientific knowledge. Hear from experts in the fields of science, philosophy, and medicine, as well as firsthand experiences of people who have lived through death as they paint a fascinating picture of life in the next realm. This groundbreaking project responds to the soul's innate desire to find meaning in life and solace in the future. Come see it for yourself or pay it forward by providing a free ticket for others to see the film. Leave your preconceptions at the door and prepare for a never-before-seen glimpse into what the next life could entail in After Death, opening October 27th. Get your tickets today or pay it forward at angel.com/3martini-lunch. That's angel.com/3martini-lunch. After Death, the end is only the beginning. Rated PG-13.
Welcome to the 3 Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Corombos of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. 3 Martinis coming up.
Thanks so much for being with us on the Friday edition of the 3 Martini Lunch. Good, bad, and crazy martinis in store for you today. Jim Garrity is off, as he mentioned in the morning jolt. He's after being in Ukraine and Taiwan. He's making his most dangerous trip yet, celebrating his anniversary with Mrs. Garrity in Minneapolis. So hopefully not too many Viking fans recognize him there. But here in Jim's place is Andy McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, now contributing editor at National Review Online, Fox News contributor, and the author of Ball of Collusion. Andy, always great to have you with us. Thank you.
Great to be with you. Sorry to hear that Jim is off in the land of Ilhan Omar. Could be somewhat Hamas-like if he heads to the wrong precincts, but I wish him all the best, all the luck in the world.
Yes, Jim will be back on Monday. Andy, let's dig into our good martini. This is one I don't think is a huge surprise. We had seen ever since West Virginia Republican Governor Jim Justice announced he was running for Senate that the polls showed that he was a very strong favorite against longtime Senator Joe Manchin, who had consistently defied the odds over the year as the state got redder and redder for presidential elections and other things. Joe Manchin seemed to have the pulse of the state just enough to hang on as a Democrat. And, we appreciate him for certain things, like insisting he won't kill the legislative filibuster. Other times he let the pressure get to him, like the Inflation Reduction Act, which did nothing of the kind. But yesterday, he had an announcement to make, and he actually really had two announcements. So here's what Joe Manchin had to say about his Senate plans, and also what he had to say about some other plans.
After months of deliberation and long conversation with my family, I believe in my heart of hearts that I have accomplished what I set out to do for West Virginia. I've made one of the toughest decisions of my life and decided that I will not be running for re-election to the United States Senate. But what I will be doing is traveling the country and speaking out to see if there is an interest in creating a movement to mobilize the middle and bring Americans together.
And he might not just be going on a tour. He's been rumored to be in talks, at least, with the No Labels movement on a possible third-party presidential bid. The other news that seemed to trickle out yesterday, or at least the rumor mill, is that No Labels is possibly trying to put together a Romney-Manchin ticket, since neither one of them is running for re-election to the Senate next year. So, Andy, plenty to chew on here. Good news for the Republicans. It's hard to think of a Democrat that West Virginia Democrats could put up that would be nearly as competitive as Joe Manchin, so it seems like a pretty safe pickup. But the more intriguing thing, of course, is what Manchin might have in store for the presidential level.
Well, I think that's exactly right, Greg. I mean, look, he was going to lose his Senate seat. So this is not, for all the throat clearing about how he, decided that he has done everything he could do for his state. I think he's done everything you could do to competently read the polls and see that he was a short timer. So I don't think he's risking a lot here. It was likely the Republicans were going to pick up that seat. I'm not trying to be too catty about this, because I think we can remember a time when Joe Manchin was more like the normal Democrat, a guy who loves his country but was a big spending left of center guy, who nevertheless would work with Republicans on things that were sensible and was strong on national security and strong about the country. To me, that used to be the normal Democratic Party, and something obviously began happening in the 1970s to the point that we have a very different Democratic Party that he seems to be an uncomfortable figure in nowadays. So for that reason, I'm sorry to see him go, although I think he was going one way or the other. The interesting thing, of course, is what you suggest about the potential of a sort of no labels presidential run. His speech yesterday, which had the backdrop of a faux Oval Office address.
Yes.
I think was even in the rhetoric of no labels, where he talked about the great middle. There wasn't really much talk, if there was any talk at all, about the words Republican and Democrat. So I think he's trying to seize on something that I think that much ballyhooed New York Times Siena poll from about a week ago made clear, which is, if you looked at just the headline of that poll, and the thing that got everybody feverish in discussing it was the idea that there were these 6 battleground states and Trump is beating Biden in 5 of them. That's what got everybody all whipped up. But of course, the reality of the race, aside from the fact that, with all the if the election were held today rhetoric, where, it's kind of obvious the election isn't going to be held today. And as a result, the Democrats didn't start 6 months ago the onslaught that's coming for Trump, which would have made Trump's numbers look very different if the election were being held today. But putting all that aside, the reality of the election, which you find if you crawl into that poll, is that it's not likely to be a one-on-one contest between Biden and Trump. And when they factored RFK Jr. into the mix, first of all, it's no longer Trump beating Biden in 5 out of 6 places. It's actually Biden winning 3, Trump winning 2, and the other one is tied. But the other thing that's astonishing is, as Jim has, I think, pointed out better than anyone, RFK Jr. is a 5-alarm nut. And yet you have 19 to 24% of people in those 6 states willing to vote for him because of the obvious dissatisfaction, to be kind about it, with the front runners in both parties. So there's clearly a space here for a third party. It doesn't mean that it'll be successful, but it could break a lot of furniture as far as this race is concerned.
And you're right that the reason no labels is potentially licking their chops here is because both Biden and Trump have negatives usually around 60%, if not higher in some cases, in terms of whether you would really want to vote for them. Biden's approval rating is always terrible, and Trump's underwater in his approval. The question is whether it's Manchin Romney or Romney Manchin, and then Kennedy, of course, would be a different factor, is would this actually work? Do you have enough people who are disgruntled? Because the Venn diagram, as Kamala Harris loves to talk about, are the people that hate Trump and the people that hate Biden. Is there enough that hate both in that 60% range that could actually make this viable? Or is this really going to end up just being, Democrats saying, well, Romney's better than Trump, but I'm still going to go with Biden. And on the other side, well, I'm not leaving Trump to vote for Mitt Romney, obviously. So while it sounds like something the media might love to track, would they actually attract a decent number of people? I remember a few months ago, there was a poll showing generic third-party candidate doing pretty well. When it was Joe Manchin, it was less once you put a specific name to it. So we haven't had anything like this, since Ross Perot over 30 years ago now. And the last third-party candidate to win an electoral vote was George Wallace back in the late 60s. So this is something we haven't dealt with in a long time. So would deep dissatisfaction with both likely nominees here actually make a third-party ticket viable, or would it just be another one that grabs some votes, maybe from one side more than the other, but ultimately doesn't actually win a state, or certainly not enough to be competitive?
Well, I could see it winning a few states, but I think that the likely outcome is that it throws the race to Biden. And, here again, I think you always have to be careful about falling in love with your own theory. And my theory from the beginning has been that Trump can't win the 2024 election because he's simply number one, he's just too unpopular. Right now, he's not as bad as he has been in some stages of the metrics about his unfavorability. It's about at 56 right now, but it never gets better than 56. And in some instances, it shoots to 67. And what I have argued is that I don't think he can get... He miraculously won in 2016 with 46% of the vote in a two-candidate race. And not surprisingly, when he got 46% in 2020, he lost. I don't think he's ever going to sniff 46% again. And all he's done since 2016, and all Republicans with him attached at the hip have done since 2016, is lose. So it's very apparent that once you widen the lens from the Republican base to the country writ large, Trump is deeply, deeply unpopular. And while I think Biden is unpopular, I don't think Biden's unpopularity is as set in stone. I think there's still some dynamism to it, whereas Trump's is simply not going to move. Everybody knows exactly what they're getting with him, and how you feel about Trump is how you feel about Trump. He's the most known person on the planet, and I just don't think the way people feel about him is going to change, which is why he never gets higher than 46. I also think once they throw everything at him, which is going to be unprecedented, what they throw at him in this campaign.
The legal cases, right?
And yeah, well, not only that, I think that, Jim has mentioned the site that Trump has, the social media platform he's got, Truth Social, is he says some crazy stuff on there, like daily, but it doesn't have nearly the reach that his Twitter feed had. I think, he's got about 4 million, maybe, followers, as opposed to 80 million or whatever it was on Twitter. So if you combine what's going to come out in these trials, including the possibility of his being convicted in one or more criminal cases, and you couple that with the fact that some of the stuff that's wild and crazy that he's been saying has had a much smaller audience, and it will get a large audience once it becomes a loop in Democratic messaging, I don't see how he can win. But a viable third-party candidate throws that kind of math, completely overboard, and changes has to change a lot of your calculations. If you could get a third-party candidate who actually could draw, say, 20 or 30% of the vote, then I think all bets are off about, those of us who've been prognosticating about what a one-on-one contest would look like.
Andy, it certainly could play out that way. I think the argument for the other direction would be that there are a lot of people that don't really like Joe Biden that vote for him because they really don't like Donald Trump. And so if they have somebody else to vote for who's more in the middle, they might go ahead and do that. I'm thinking of suburban women in particular who really, really don't like Donald Trump. So to have somebody else siphoning off those votes from Joe Biden potentially could go a long way for the Republicans. However, I don't think much of that happens unless the third party ticket has a legitimate shot at winning the whole thing. Because if people hate Trump that much, I don't think they're going to vote for somebody that they don't think has an actual chance to win. But we will see. In fact, the ticket doesn't even exist yet, so we'll find out.
Hey, y'all, this is Sarah from The Sarah Carter Show. Thanks for listening to 3 Martini Lunch. We all have a heartfelt reason to support our blood pressure. In fact, more than half the U.S. population would benefit from blood pressure support. Superbeats Heart Chews are an easy and convenient way to support healthy blood pressure and promote heart-healthy energy. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants in Superbeats are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And believe me, I know, because I'm traveling all over the country covering stories and frankly, sometimes all over the world. And it's so easy. I just keep my Super Beets in my handbag, in my pocket, wherever. And I've got amazing energy. And guess what? They taste really good. So supporting healthy blood pressure comes with a bonus. Super Beets Heart Chews support healthy circulation. So you not only get blood pressure support, you also get a productive, heart-healthy energy without the crash. Double your potential with Super Beet Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beet Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code Sarah. That's SARA. Getsuperbeets.com, code Sarah to get 15% off your first order. Getsuperbeets.com, promo code Sarah.
All right, on to our bad martini now, Andy. And this story has been percolating for a few days now. Steven Crowder, the podcaster, had somehow gotten a few pages of the Nashville school shooters manifesto. This was at the Covenant School back in March. This girl who said she was a transgender boy and whatever attacks the Covenant School. I believe she had been a student there in the past. We hailed the police at the time for charging right in and confronting her and saving lives that otherwise could have been taken. There were still fatalities there. Kids, it was horrific. Administrators trying to protect the kids. It was absolutely terrible. But now for the last, whatever it is now, 7 months, there's this manifesto that we don't have access to. It has not been released yet. You have some parents at the school saying they don't want it. The police refuse to do it. So a few pages of this get out, and it's not the whole thing, so you don't know how many conclusions you can draw from it. But from the pages we do see, she really hated the kids there because she thought they had white privilege and they needed to be attacked for that, which is absolutely insane. But instead of more of the manifesto coming out or analysis of the manifesto, all we get is criticism of the fact that parts of it have been released. There are 7 Nashville police officers now that have been suspended in connection to this. So, Andy, how does this break down legally? Does a prosecutor or the police have the flexibility to not release this? Do they have an obligation, on the other hand, to the public to release it as long as there's not anything in there that could inspire someone to do the same? What are the rules here?
Well, I think what you're seeing, Greg, is what gets people very whipped up about two-tiered justice, which really the way that you carry out a different legal standard for your political friends and your political enemies, or your causes that you're sympathetic to and causes that are anathema. The way that's done is by manipulating the process, right? So, for example, if you get a mass murder attack that's carried out by, say, a white supremacist, that instantly, the wheels of justice turn really fast, and instantly we see what the manifesto says, right? And the reason for that is because you can make things work quickly if you're determined to. So sometimes the police will just release things. After all, especially if you're in a case where the shooter has been killed, so there'll never be a trial, you can do Freedom of Information Act really fast and get things public. So much to the point where that occasionally the police will just go ahead and the district attorneys will go ahead and put stuff out because they know that eventually it's going to come out anyway. And nobody is pushing against that, right? Because in those situations, the media wants everything out, and the organs of opinion want everything out. But in this case, this is a very inconvenient attack for the powers that be. So in those kinds of situations, you can slow walk disclosure. And what the same police and prosecutors who would look you in the eye and talk about a manifesto publicly instantly after an attack, if it's committed by the right kind of defendant or the right kind of gunman, in these instances, what they'll tell you is, well, we have an ongoing investigation. That's non-public information. We can't release that at this time. And it's the same set of rules. It's just it depends on how they want to manipulate them in the situation. I had a discussion on my own podcast yesterday with Rich Lowry about the remarkable feat by Democratic prosecutors in getting these Trump cases to trial conveniently during the 2024 election calendar. And we were talking about the ongoing civil fraud case against Trump in New York. Can you imagine, Greg, filing a civil complaint in 2022 in New York and getting to trial in 2023? I mean, generally, if once you file a civil complaint in New York, you better hope it comes with a retirement plan because you may not get to trial for 10 years. But if you're determined to do it and you're in control of the wheels, which, progressives are in New York, you can get things done very quickly. And on the other hand, if something is inconvenient and you happen to be in charge of how the wheel turns and how fast it turns, you can slow walk it forever. And wouldn't it all surprise me if these cops, whichever of them were involved in how this thing got out, if the motivation there was, some sense of frustration and unfairness at the obvious reality that if the political context of that attack were different, this information would have been put out instantly.
It's stories like this that remind you how valuable the internet is and social media and free speech in particular, I think, on X these days. I mean, if it weren't for social media, we wouldn't know about this. I think most of the anti-Semitism that's running rampant on campus, we wouldn't know about. The mainstream media is not going to spend time on it every day. And if they are spending time on it, it's only because there's so much push for it on social media. So the impact of not having information only coming from a few sources like it was just a few decades ago has changed things a lot. Time now to let you know about our fantastic sponsor for the day, and that is 4Patriots, makers of many outstanding products, including the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. The generator is now new and improved, which means it gives you more power. And solar generators actually charge more devices for longer during a blackout than other types of generators. This new generator has double the capacity plus new expandable capability for even more power. So when your power goes out, you don't have to worry about powering your fridge, your freezer, medical devices, and a whole lot more. And it keeps all that expensive food in your fridge and freezer safe. You don't have to throw it out. Also, the generator comes with a solar panel. It charges for free in the sun, obviously. You never need to buy gas to run this thing. It's fume-free, it's silent, and it's safe. 100% satisfaction guaranteed. So visit 4patriots.com/martini to see this week's discounts and deals before they are gone and get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, on to our crazy martini now, Andy. And this is just wild. And this actually happened in the last presidential election cycle, too. One of the things you hear all the time is kids of politicians ought to be off limits. But usually those kids are, kids. I remember in the 92 campaign, Chelsea Clinton was, 12 or 13 years old. And everybody said, she's a child. There's no reason to talk about her. Leave her alone. And for the most part, people left her alone. Didn't necessarily work that way with the Bush twins. Yes, they were 18, but they got caught drinking before they were 21 a couple times. And boy, did the media love that. So a little bit of a double standard there. For the most part, the Obama girls were left alone. But when it comes to actual adult children, there's a different standard, and there should be a different standard. The reason there's a dust-up about this now is because Vivek Ramaswamy called out Nikki Haley's 25-year-old daughter for using TikTok while Nikki Haley was talking about TikTok needing to be banned. So he thought she was a hypocrite in that regard. And she called him scum for mentioning her daughter during the debate. And Ron DeSantis, when asked about it later, he didn't comment on it during the debate, said, I keep the kids out of it for sure. But NBC is now declaring Ron DeSantis a hypocrite here because after saying that going after an opponent's children is out of bounds, DeSantis, however, goes after Joe Biden's son on a weekly basis. On the campaign trail, the governor does not shy away from making a punchline out of Hunter Biden 53, joking about his history of addiction and embarrassing details of his personal life that have surfaced publicly. Apparently during his stump speech, when he's talking about not having pornography in school libraries, he says, you want to do adult material, do that on your own time. Hey, go look at Hunter Biden's laptop for all I care. Just keep it away from our kids. And so, Andy, every time we get something about Hunter Biden in the news in a negative light, which is most of it, it's, you're ganging up on him and you're not being fair to him because he's an addict. And that's terrible. You get into the financial crimes. Joe Biden just loves his son. There's always a defense for the most despicable behavior from Hunter Biden. I have a feeling we still haven't scratched the surface on some of the personal conduct that's on that laptop. But what do you make of the media trying to run cover on a presidential child who's already eligible for AARP?
Oh, I have to say, Greg, I love when I get to come on the 3 Martini Lunch because there's always a thread that connects the martinis. And we just got finished talking about the unpopularity of the front runners of both parties. And of course, on the Democratic side, that has something to do with Joe Biden being, older than Methuselah, right? So,
Right.
If you get to the point where your presidents are going to be 150 years old, then their children are going to be of somewhat advanced age. And in this instance, we have Hunter Biden, who is 8 years older than Ron DeSantis, with the media telling DeSantis to stop picking on the kids. In the meantime, geez. So, I think it's certainly fair game to take shots at people who are 53 years old, especially when they have the track record that Hunter Biden has. I also think it's rich for Hunter Biden and his apologists to be complaining about this sort of thing when he happens to be a guy who, let's be real about this. In every test that he's ever taken in his life, the only question he had to get right was name, right?
Right.
Everything that's come his way has been through nothing more than his connections to his family. And he was born on third base and has still managed to screw it up. So given the advantages that he had, the idea that, people are picking on poor Hunter, I find that a little bit difficult to take. But I think more to the point, the House investigators have so far shown that from 2014 to 2019, the Biden family took in over $24 million from foreign sources that were agents, basically, of corrupt and anti-American regimes. Some of that money now it appears to have gone to Joe Biden personally. But I've always said that, it doesn't matter whether it went to him personally or not. The whole business was capitalizing, exploiting his political influence. Hunter appears to have been the major vehicle for that. And in any other situation, if somebody was a cog in a wheel that was obvious corruption to the point where millions and millions of dollars passed from anti-American regimes to a very powerful politician, I think people would be very concerned, and rightly so, about that cog in the wheel. And the fact that he happens to be the president's son, while not surprising, should not be immunity for him. This is a major corruption investigation. And because of all the advantages that Hunter Biden has had in his life, it hasn't gotten nearly the attention that it rates. And, if the question here is, who should we fault? Ron DeSantis, who is trying to draw attention to this, which deserves attention, or the media, which is trying to suppress it, I really don't think DeSantis is the problem.
No, DeSantis is clearly not the problem. We can have a debate over whether a 25-year-old woman is fair game at a debate, I guess, over the TikTok question. But, you look at the treatment of Hunter Biden here and the left's knee-jerk defense. I don't remember them having the same approach towards the adult Trump children. And the adult Trump children shouldn't get that treatment either. But if you're going to try to be even remotely consistent, there's obviously a double standard there too. So, but
yeah, I would just add to that, Greg, that, I think Vivek's problem is that he was obnoxious, from start to finish. If he had been otherwise wired differently and had performed differently, and this was the only thing, borderline objectionable that he had said during the whole debate, I don't think it would have been that big of a deal. So I think a lot of the condemnation, which I think is perfectly appropriate, but a lot of the condemnation that's come his way about the shot at Haley's daughter is a function of the fact that he was overall obnoxious, and that just seemed to be the nadir of what was overall just an awful performance.
It's an ugly issue, but the Democrats' ability to constantly circle the wagons around a guy who doesn't deserve the circle of wagons is just
right on a day when Ivanka Trump was testifying,
right?
In a case, after Eric and Don Jr. had to testify last week. I think the same day as the debate, if I'm remembering right, or maybe it was the day after, Ivanka Trump was testifying because the Democrats have concocted this ridiculous, farcical civil fraud case in New York, and they've trooped the entire Trump family in, including all the children, who I guess are now in their 40s and 50s or thereabouts. They're not just taking shots at the Trump children. They are trying to, in a situation where they don't have a single fraud victim, they're trying to put the family business out of business, including take $250 million back in a situation where they can't really prove fraud, and they don't have any victims coming forward to say, yeah, he bilked us out of money. So talk about your double standard.
Amazing. Andy, you're right. There is a clear thread going through today's martinis. But as always, thank you for filling in for Jim. We look forward to talking to you again down the road. Have a good weekend.
Thanks so much, Greg. You too.
Andy McCarthy is the former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. He's now a contributing editor at National Review and a Fox News contributor. His book is Ball of Collusion. We also want to wish a very happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there. We thank you for your service. We thank you for your sacrifice, and we thank your families for their sacrifices as well on behalf of our nation. I'm Greg Corumbus of Radio America. Jim Garrity will be back on Monday. In the meantime, please subscribe to the podcast. If you don't already, tell some friends about us as well. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch Podcast. Follow us all on X. He's at Andrew C. McCarthy. Jim is at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a tremendous weekend. Again, happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans. And join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.